Dude,
with respect
listen,
to that statement.
everyone listening knows that I beat you in this like argument. You're just like
Okay,
fucking
are you just
nitpicking.
running away?
You're just it doesn't logically follow. That's setting aside the whole logical impossibility, like metaphysical impossibility that I just laid out there with the temporal thing. So yeah, that kind of absolutely destroys and obliterates Jack Antrick's whole, like, you know, his whole, he called it his like thermonuclear whatever. I think Tom was
No,
the one
I
that
called it
proposed
that.
it.
I called
Oh,
it.
okay.
The
Yeah, so do you see how
thermonuclear.
quickly I just
No.
destroyed it? I'm like 18 and I just
Oh, you're
destroyed it.
18?
Imagine if I was his age, like I would absolutely obliterate him.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, quick
First of all,
point.
hold on a second. Thermonuclear doesn't refer to the destruction. In fact, it just refers to him losing his temper.
Yeah, but I think that's fake. Like, dude, I see through it. Like, I think it's just fake. He's like, I think he does it to just like unnerve his opponents. Like, he's just trying to do it to just get under their skin or like just get into their heads or something. Because it's like a kind of tactic, which is fine.
Hey, LaTeX.
Darth Dawkins uses it as well.
We let you have your opening statement. I don't want to hear you going on that long again. Though,
Okay,
yeah?
sorry.
Keep it brief.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is Jack there? Did he hear that?
God, please tell me you heard.
I don't understand the logical objection you made.
I don't think he's there.
I don't think he's in the actual call.
What about Danny? Is he there?
Yeah, one of his sycophants, if they're in the call. We can talk to them.
Well, in the first place, you don't really understand what moral particularism is, but we'll bracket that.
Okay.
To your point that that Jack is just imposing what he disvalues on God or on Christianity, that's not what he's doing. Their presumption was that on Christianity, the Holocaust is not a good thing.
Can you mute him?
Do you agree?
He's not speaking.
I'm sorry?
Mute.
Can LaTeX mute his mic? We don't want to hear him burp and clink and move glasses.
I was just drinking.
Well, whatever, dude. Just mute, please, so the other person can talk.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was picking it up. I'll mute.
Very sensitive mics on here.
Yeah, I just asked, did you agree that on Christianity, something like the Holocaust is not good or an evil thing or ought not happen?
Sorry, was that a question?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
So that's the sense of evil that Jack is talking about. He's not talking about his own, what he values or disvalues himself. He's just saying that on Christianity, this kind of event ought not happen. So that's, I see that as diffusing your objection that Jack is just merely imposing his preferences on God or Christianity.
Yeah, but it doesn't follow. So if this was like some kind of universal law which exists fundamental, undergirds God as a external being or external non-contingent actualizer, then yes, you could make up on this basis, you could argue that yes, it's actually bad that God created a universe wherein this phenomena occurs. The fact that you find it distasteful obviously is irrelevant. So then the only thing we have left is that God said it's bad. But God said it's bad. The only reason he characterizes it as such is not because it has some kind of physical property or essence of badness. It's because, well, what does it mean when God says something is bad? Does it mean that it's... I've never heard this being said by a Christian, or I've never read it in the Bible.
All things
Can I finish? Can I finish?
No, I just answered your question, right? I said all things considered, it ought not happen. That's what we mean.
All things considered, it ought not happen. Yes. What that means is, like, what does that actually mean in an actual, like, real pragmatic sense? What does it actually mean? It means that agents, free-willed agents, because it wouldn't make sense for God to say that this ought not happen if we were just robots and we had no free will. So inductively we can, infer that yes, he's talking about what type of actions ought to be taken by free-willed agents. He's not talking about himself. It doesn't apply to himself. If he created a world full of AIs, which are robotic, deterministic, bots, then it wouldn't it makes sense. It wouldn't make sense whatsoever. So if you apply the principle of charity to what this means, and it is the only context in which it actually makes sense, then yeah, he's talking about free will agents and what those agents ought to do. So it doesn't apply to him.
Okay, I'm not really understanding all of what you're saying, but in the first place, we're just going to establish that your first objection doesn't go through. Jack was not saying that because I just value this, therefore God doesn't exist, or something like that, or was using his own values to run the argument, right? So you agree now that the sense of value or right or wrong is only within the framework of Christianity.
Yeah, that wasn't my main objection. That was just a remark that I made at the end of my, opening statement.
Okay, so that cannot. We'll just say that that's not the main.
Yeah,
we'll just say that
it's a minor objection. But yeah,
that's not the main. Well, look, we'll just say that that's not Danny's main rebuttal, and that's just the rebuttal towards the end of what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what you were saying earlier,
mm-hmm.
I didn't. So you were saying something like, when God thinks to himself that this ought happen, or the Holocaust ought not happen,
mm-hmm.
you're saying that somehow necessarily implies agency. But there are things that God could think to himself ought not happen that don't have to do with agency at all, right? He might think that it ought not be the case that there are 11 planets, right? That and that doesn't involve agency. So our concept of what ought happen and ought not happen doesn't necessarily imply agency.
Sorry, I have ADHD. I just kind of zoned out for the last 5 seconds. Could you just repeat the last 5 seconds of that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
If God thinks to himself that something ought not happen, that doesn't necessarily imply agency. Right? God might think to himself that there ought not be 11 planets. There ought to be 8
mm-hmm.
planets, for instance, right? So just our concept of evil doesn't necessarily imply agency. So that's I thought that's what you were suggesting, that when God thinks to himself something ought not happen, that it's necessarily implying agents with free will, and that's just not.
Mm-hmm. When God communicates that something ought not happen. So you can, okay, yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's not necessarily entailed from the fact that God communicates something ought not happen. It doesn't not necessarily entailed by that yes, free-willed agents. I'm not super held up on that point. It's not really a massive point to me. I don't particularly care too much about that point, but my original point does stand that if you are communicating if we assume that this is the context because it's the only real context that makes sense. Yes, it's not necessarily the case, but just it's not necessarily the case that the law of thermodynamics is correct. It's not. It doesn't matter. It's this is the most reasonable, rational way of interpreting it, or interpreting the phenomena or the information that we're working with. Yeah.
Okay, well, you said you weren't willing to die on that hill. So I'm. What hill are you willing to die on? What is your main point?
Well, do you remember what I said about the metaphysical impossibility?
Could you go over that again?
Yeah, I can. So in order for God, so basically, the essence of what Jack was arguing, the main argument that he made was something akin to, if you have God who is omniscient and should be able to create an sorry, I'm blanking out. If God is omniscient, he should be able to create.
Would it help if I gave you the argument, and then would it help if I?
If you're familiar with it, yes, I would. That would be appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind you interrupting me. You can just interrupt me at the point where you disagree, okay? Because I don't have to go through all of it.
Okay.
So, Jack thinks that, given a standard conception of God, that entails that if you're God, you know how to bring about any logical possible world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the first idea, that God knows how to bring about any logical possible world.
It's a conditional, yeah. So P1's conditional. Yep. Next premise.
All right. It's logically possible. There's a logical possible world where everyone does the good. No one sins, in other words.
Wait, could you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, there's some logically possible world where everyone chooses not to sin.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so then sin is the kind of thing that God thinks to himself ought not happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and given God's goodness, God.
Oh wait. Sorry. Oh wait. Okay, I can grant you that, but you can see why that's contentious, right?
Well, then I can just
sin
make
is
it
the
easier.
kind of thing that God thinks to
Let's just get
himself.
rid of the sin. Let's just get rid of sin. When I say that there's some logically possible world where no one sins, I just mean that there's some logically possible world where everyone does what God wants them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now we move on to omnibenevolence. That idea is that God would only actualize the best possible scenario, best possible world.
So we're working with like an Abrahamic, specifically like a Christian God. We're not working with like a more of a umbrella type of God that's more just, like metaphysical.
You were referring to Tom's video about the thermonuclear thing. He was talking to, I believe, a Catholic who was holding to a classical theistic framework, right?
Yeah.
So
that's fine. I can defend this. I can try and defend. I think I can defend this, but ultimately, I wouldn't. I'm not a Catholic, so I don't like. It's not a big deal
the relevant trait is not being a Catholic. It's holding to classical theism or a version of classical theism where you're holding to God knows how to do everything logically possible. God is all good and such. God's omniscient. All of that. Okay. So if you're willing to drop one of those, then Jack's argument just simply doesn't apply to you.
I get it. No, I am incentive. So like, I do have an incentive to defend it. So,
all right.
But go ahead. Yeah. Continue with the premises.
So we moved from saying that there's some logically possible world where everyone does exactly what God wants them to do. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I said that God being all good would only actualize the best world possible, right? He wouldn't actualize a lesser world. That's entailed by his omnibenevolence. Do we agree?
I don't see why it's entailed by his omnibenevolence. So if he's all good, and this is not where the heart of my counter or whatever refutation lies. This is not the bulk of or the main part of it, but this is just a contentious point. I don't see why it's entailed by his omnibenevolence that he does not create or he creates the world in which everyone follows, does what he wants, because that would seem like that just only benefits him. It doesn't benefit the people who are in those possible worlds.
What I take omnibenevolence to imply is that if God's choosing among which worlds to actualize, he's not going to actualize a lesser world, right? He's going to actualize the best possible world.
Best according to what standard? Best according to what? But where has he said that this would constitute the best possible world? Why is it the best possible world?
We haven't gotten that far. The point is that God's going to choose the best world according to his own standards.
I'm sorry. What do you mean we haven't got that far? This is the justification for your premise.
No. I'm telling you what I mean by omnibenevolence. It's not I'm just saying that what I mean by omnibenevolence is that God, according to his own standards, would not actualize a lesser world. He would actualize the best possible world, the goodest world, if you will.
Okay, this is contentious, but you know what? Just for the sake of entertaining everyone here, I'll grant you that. But because it's not the bulk of my refutation, but that is contentious. That's like shaky logic. You're using shaky logic as a premise, but we can continue.
Okay. So then we move on to the fact that what it means if you have an agent that chooses between what God wants him to do versus what God doesn't want him to do. By definition, God is going to want the scenario in which the agent does what he wants them to do.
This seems like an instantiated. Sorry. So the previous premise was like a universal quantified statement, right? And you had like a predicate, right? And then you have, let's just say now you've just given it some constant, and you've you've just instantiated it with some constant, and you said you have an agent. So it's not really anything profound. So do you want to just continue to the next premise, or?
I don't
see why
you're
you added
accepting
this.
or rejecting the premise. So are you accepting?
I'm just saying I just don't see why it's relevant to the argument, as I just stated. It's not relevant.
Okay, whether it's relevant or not, you can still, assent to it or not, right? It may be relevant. If you want me to show why it's relevant, I can do that. But you can firstly assent to it.
Because when you have additional premises in an argument which aren't relevant, or they have no reason for being there, there's usually a reason for that. But for this purpose of this, we can just ignore it.
Do you want me to connect the relevance to it?
Yeah. Why are you bringing up a specific agent? Why does it matter if it's a specific agent? I thought it's for all agents.
It's for any agent. It's for any agent. For any agent, if they do, if they're just deliberating between what God wants them to do versus what God doesn't want them to do, God, according to His own standard, would prefer the world in which that agent or any given agent does what he wants them to do.
And that would already be entailed by the best possible world, which was in the previous premise. That's why I said it's irrelevant. But we can continue, like you said. I accept that. But I'm just pointing out that
the point is that connects what that connects us to is that if there's two logically possible worlds, a world in which all agents do what God wants them to do, and a world in which all agents does not do what God wants them to do, given God's omnipotence, that He knows how to actualize any possible world, given God's omnibenevolence, that He only actualizes the best possible world, and given that God prefers or thinks that the world in which all agents do what He wants them to do is the better world, it follows that we should be in a world where all agents do what He wants them to do, but we're not in such a world, so therefore God does not exist. That got it.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is that in a vacuum, this does work. That's fine. It does work in a vacuum. But the thing is, it depends on what modality we're applying this to. So obviously you can't just obviously when there are other factors involved, or when there are other things involved, it can affect the let's just say the soundness of the argument. So in this context, I can just say that you have God who, yes, even if we grant all this, if we go back to the second premise, which is that if God has two worlds or two possible worlds, and one is the best possible world, another is a suboptimal possible world, let's say, for lack of a better term, then he should pick the latter. Sorry, he should pick the former. That is fine, but I can just say that there is no you can't dichotomize the predicament that God was in when He created this universe. He was not presented with two possible worlds. He was only presented with one possible world, and that's the world which He had already created. Why? Well, because in order for something to be possible, there needs to be some kind of potential that can be actualized. Now, when God actualized the potential of our universe, this created all of the agents, the free-willed agents, which were then able to, take decisions which either did or did not conform or were not congruent with the laws that God set, the universal laws that God set, which, are either bad or good. You're either bad or you're good, whatever. So if let's just say, so basically what determines whether the world is the best world or not the best world occurs after it has been actualized. So temporally, God can only really know whether it's the best possible world if He's already created it. Because the only way to actually know whether it's the best possible world, the only time where it goes from being neutral, so because there's neutral potential, right? So the potential is there and it's neutral. Once it's actualized, that's when it becomes either 1 or 2 or whatever. So you can look at it mathematically. Once the potential is actualized, that's when it becomes either good or bad, binary. Okay, but before that, it's just 0. Okay, yeah, 0 is also binary, whatever. But you get my point. Before that, there was no.
Pretty sure
it was not best.
Haven't
or it was
your
not the
point,
best.
but it seems like you're just rejecting that.
Wait, did you say you do or you don't get my point?
I'm pretty sure I haven't, but it seems like you're just saying that it's.
Well, I can communicate it. I can try to convey it more. If you don't understand it, I can try to convey it more.
Well, so far, what I'm understanding from you is it's just not possible that it's not a logically possible world where everyone chooses to do.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Hello?
Am I still breaking up?
No, you're not.
It sounded like what you were saying is that it's not a logically possible world, where everyone chooses to do what God wants them to do. That seems like the conclusion of what.
The only logically possible world is the world that exists. Because in order for something to be logically possible, or in order for something
you're gonna have
to
big
be,
problems with
in order
that.
for the, okay, so I'm not going to make that statement. But what I was trying to say was that in order for the universe to exist, because that is the subject. So basically, you have a conditional which applies to the universe. You can instantiate with the constant of the universe, but that
world and universe are not synonyms. World and universe. Wait, there's a misconception. World and universe are not synonymous terms, right? There could be a world in which there's no universe.
Sure, it's like a proper superset of the universe. You can have it like a sufficient condition of that. So yeah,
I don't know what
the universe is.
By any of.
Do you know the distinction between logical sufficiency and necessity?
Yes.
Okay, so it's sufficient. So you can have a world, a possible Yes, it is.
No, you can have a world without a universe.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's sufficient. Okay.
Well, you were conflating universe and world earlier.
Okay. Why are you playing semantics now? So is this the best that Jack Anstrix and you guys, this community has got?
I'm just waiting for your response. So far, you've given no adequate response.
What response? I'm deconstructing your whole argument.
Do you disagree with the argument, or do you accept my argument as valid or sound?
Yeah, it's a completely
okay. Game
I
over,
accepted
right?
It.
This is you just asked if this is the best. You just asked if this is the best that Jack Anstrix can offer.
Sorry.
What you've just accepted to was the argument. You think it sounds.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. That such a God doesn't exist.
Fuck. Okay, yes, sorry, I made a mistake. I just made a quick typo, a verbal typo. I said, yeah, it's not sound, it's valid. Okay, so yes, it's formally
Which premise do you disagree with? What premise do you disagree with?
Okay, so the logical form is valid, but what I'm saying is that the premise I'm disagreeing with is the one that I'm saying, that
which one?
God doesn't have. It's not logically possible for what you consider to be the best possible world to exist.
No, I think. Look, let me go over the premises again. I think it's the premise that you're contesting is that there's some logical possible world. That's a world without contradiction, where all agents do what God wants to do. There's no contradiction there.
No. So, okay, yeah, actually, yeah, that would be the premise that I'm disagreeing with. Yeah, that is the premise.
Yeah. So now you're gonna give the contradiction in the statement that all persons or all agents do what God wants them to do.
Yeah. Why is that a contradiction? What
there's a contradiction entailed by that, and you're going to give me the P and not P.
Yeah, I'm not following. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being retarded, but I don't.
Okay, look, I'll just give you a simple example. If I make a statement that some bachelor is married, well, that implies a P and not P. That implies that there's someone that some person P is married, and that same person is also unmarried at the same time, the same sense of the terms.
Conjunction, negation, MX. Yeah, that's
there
fine.
you go.
But what
now,
I'm saying is,
you're saying that there's a logical contradiction in a world where all agents do what God wants them to do. So now you're going to give me the P and not P.
Well, I'm not seeing where the contradiction is. I've just
there is no contradiction. That's my claim. My claim is that there's no contradiction in a world where.
No, so the reason I'm rejecting that premise is not because there's a contradiction in the actual argument. The reason I'm rejecting the premise.
Then you think it's logically possible that there's such a world, because all logical. What it means to say some world is what it means in logic. What it means to say that some world is logically possible is that it bears no contradiction. Some impossible world means that there's a world that bears a contradiction. So it seems like you're not rejecting the premise.
No, so a possible world, it can not have a contradiction in the actual syllogism, but you can derive a contradiction from from the presupposition. So it's
then
presuppositionally
it's not logically possible.
Yeah, it's not logically possible because presuppositionally it entails
there's a
contradiction.
So now you're going to give me the P and not
presuppositionally, yes, not in the actual syllogism.
Go ahead and give me the P and not P in the world in which all agents do what God wants them to do.
Yeah. So the P and not P is literally just a metaphysical impossibility in the form that you have affirmed a world in which everyone does what God wants them to do, and I'm saying that that is impossible metaphysically, given that it results in, it's just impossible by virtue of what I've said, which is that God could not have created such a world, because in order for God to know what the best possible world is, he first has to create it.
Is that
so
P?
The world he created now is
Was that your
the world
P?
he created now is the best possible world because it's the world that exists.
Wait, you're talking about a different premise. You're talking about the only premise I'm discussing is there's no logical contradiction in the statement that all agents do what God wants them to do. So what's P? Just give me your P, and then and then I can negate it.
Yeah, but why are you so hard pressed? Like, why are you so insistent on me getting like a very strict
because that's what
logical
it means to
what are you using? Is this S5? What are you using here to try and argue this? I'm not sure. What is this?
Wait, in the same way that you understood what it meant to say that there's some contradiction in a statement that there's a bachelor that's married, right? Whatever that sense of logic you understood there, I'm applying the same sense of logic here.
It's not the same sense of logic. There are different logics. So you can be using some like paraconsistent.
No, you misunderstood me. You misunderstood me. You understand that there's a logical contradiction in this in the statement that there's some bachelor that's married, right?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever sense of logic you're using there, do you think that there's the same type of problem in the statement that all agents do what God wants them to do?
Yeah, presuppositionally there is, yeah.
Okay, so just like with the unmarried man, or the bachelor is a married man, I can derive a P and not P. It implies that some person is married as well as some person is not married at the same time, in the same sense of the terms. Now, that's a P and not P. You're going to do the same thing with the statement that all agents do what God wants them to do. So what's your P?
All agents do what God wants. Yeah, so so would this just like show that the contradiction in the best world, the logically possible best world, or?
I'm just looking for a contradiction, as you're saying there is, in the statement that all agents do what God wants them to do.
But we know that that's not the case, just by virtue of...
Yeah, that's why it's a possible world. It's not the actual world, right? We're talking about a possible world. So is there...
Yeah, I reject that it's possible. I reject that it's possible.
Okay, so that means there's a goddamn contradiction, right? So give me the goddamn contradiction.
Why does it require a... Because in order for me to... I can give you a contradiction, but it's a presuppositional contradiction possible. Because you're applying this to the... Because in order to determine that it's logically possible, you haven't just spontaneously just arrived at that premise. You've derived that from presuppositions which apply to the... Which are based in like the modality of what's metaphysical.
Why didn't you offer that? Why didn't you?
So I don't know why you're trying to stick to the abstract.
Excuse me. Why didn't you say all that shit when I talked about how there's a bachelor that is married, right? You didn't have to say any of that shit, but you understood the problem.
Because that's...
Right? Well,
what do you mean? Wait.
Oh, what about all the presuppositions about bachelors and stuff like that?
Yeah. Because a bachelor is married isn't a contradiction in the presupposition. This is why I'm fucking smarter than you. A bachelor that's married isn't a contradiction in the presuppositions. It's a contradiction in the predicates that's given to like the bound variables.
Well, that's fine. Is there a contradiction in the predicates of the statement that all agents do what God wants them to do? Okay, then that means that the statement is coherent, right? In the same sense that the statement...
No, I just reject it. It's unsound. No, wait. The actual premise is unsound.
I'm talking about soundness. I'm talking about coherency. If it's coherent, then it's logically possible.
Okay, a possible world. Okay, that's a property of like a subject, which is a world. Okay, an impossible world is a property of a subject, which is a world. I'm saying that it doesn't matter whatever you... I'm just rejecting the whole premise, which is that...
Danny, be careful. You might make your voice break.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, what I'm saying is that This is why I don't like this possible world shit. Like, this is not my area of
because you
expertise.
don't have a contradiction to demonstrate.
Dude,
with respect
listen,
to that statement.
everyone listening knows that I beat you in this like argument. You're just like
are you just
nitpicking.
running away?
You're just nitpicking on.
Are you
just
serious,
nitpicking
dude?
on like the. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Looks
it's
like
metaphysically
completely
impossible.
insane.
Guys, listen to me.
You're saying it's a contradiction
impossible.
and can't spell out a contradiction, and then you say you won.
Danny's been leading you around the room by your nose, my guy.
All right, guys, fine. Let me phrase it this way. Is it a contradiction to say that some X is metaphysically impossible and that X is logically impossible? If I can join those two statements, is that a contradiction? It is a contradiction. Therefore, by counterexample,
no, it's not a contradiction.
Bitch.
Wait, yes, are you saying? Wait, what did you say again?
It's a counterexample. It's a counterexample. Yeah.
I didn't quite hear what you said, but
I said, is it a contradiction to say that X is metaphysically impossible and that X is logically possible?
No, there's no contradiction there.
Bro, when you're applying it to the world, yes, it is, because what is metaphysically impossible in the universe?
Let me explain it to you. Here's an example.
No, because it's presupposed. Wait. In order to say that the universe is.
Let me get this out, because you said something really dumb, and I'm just going to show the room, right? If I say that it's physically impossible to jump to the moon, as I am right now without a suit or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then that doesn't mean that it's therefore impossible, logically impossible that I could do such a thing, right? So in the same way, the metaphysical modal type is under the umbrella of logical possibility, just like the physical modal type. So it could be the case that, however, you're construing metaphysical impossibility, that X is metaphysically impossible, yet it's still logically impossible, just like in the same way that you could say X is physically impossible, though it be logically impossible. So what you said was dumb.
Dude, oh my god. This is how like Jack Anstrix like.
Go ahead and just reply to what I said, rather than, I know the meta is very convenient for you to go there because you're just dodging what I'm saying.
Okay. No, I won't go meta. I'll address the argument. So, if something is metaphysically impossible, okay, that means it cannot happen. If it's impossible. So if I say that it's physically impossible.
It cannot happen in the metaphysical sense. Just like if I say I cannot jump to the moon, it cannot happen logically possible?
Okay. What does logically possible mean then? What does that actually mean?
It means no contradiction. There's no contradiction in the amongst the propositions that constitute that world.
Doesn't violate the laws of classical logic.
This is such an okay. So it's not logically possible. So it's not logically possible. You've just affirmed that's the case. What's the justification for affirming that? The justification is that it's not metaphysically impossible, because in order for it to be logically possible, it has to be metaphysically impossible presuppositionally.
Excuse me, sir. I can grant that all agents do what God wants them to do is metaphysically impossible. Let me grant that. There's another question, though, whether it's logically possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the whole the argument that Jack runs, right, is the modal type is logical possibility, right? So everything turns on whether it's logically possible that all agents do what God wants them to do. We can go ahead and grant that it's metaphysically impossible.
Yeah. So if it's metaphysically impossible, right, that means that it cannot happen. So
in the metaphysical sense,
how is it logically possible? Like, I'm just not wrapping my mind around it.
You're not getting it. Like, think about my physical possibility again, right? If I say it's physically impossible for me to jump to the moon, and then I say, well, therefore it cannot happen, it only cannot happen within the physical constraints of the world. Same thing with metaphysical possibility. If it's metaphysically impossible, it cannot happen given those metaphysical constraints. The relevant modal type, though, with respect to Jack's argument, is not metaphysical possibility. It's not physical possibility. It's logical possibility.
Okay. But that is actually a relevant type. So you can't say that we can't be talking about a metaphysical God.
So
it's not relevant. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Then Jack's argument isn't applicable to a metaphysical God.
Of course it's not, right? Because it's all in the logical possible domain.
Then the metaphysical God hasn't been disproven by Jack's argument.
We haven't gotten there. As long as you construe God's omnipotence in terms of logical possibility, then you have a problem, right? I don't really care if there's this God with omnipotence, and the way you're construing omnipotence is in terms of metaphysical possibility. Philosophers of religion are talking about the kind of omnipotence that's parasitic on logical possibility.
Okay, so then, guys, even if I concede, then the logical God then the God that Jack has created in his like logical vacuum doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that the actual God, like in the real world, doesn't exist. Like he doesn't disprove. That's like me saying. That's like me. Wait. That's like me saying no, guys. That's like me saying if a theoretical apple exists and I give it this condition, blah 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 blah, and therefore it doesn't exist. Yeah, I'm talking about a theoretical apple. That doesn't mean that an actual apple in the real world.
Look. The reason why you're wrong is that philosophers of religion and Christian apologists are using omnipotence. The modal type that makes sense of omnipotence is logical possibility, not a metaphysical possibility.
I don't care. So, I'm not them. I don't know who they are.
Okay, then you're just not engaging with Jack's argument. It seems like you can accept all the premises of Jack's argument. The guy last night, the video that you were being critical of, you were being critical of Jack in that video, saying that his argument was no good. Right? It's actually a good argument if you think that the way that omnipotence is cashed out in terms of logical possibility, like the person that was talking to Jack. So you actually don't think it's a stupid argument or an argument that can be obliterated, as you were saying, right? Because it's not even an argument that you're willing to engage with.
Because it's obliterated in terms of a real world. It's not applicable to the real world God. It's just applicable to Jack's construct.
The argument that Jack was giving was just with respect to the modal type of logical possibility.
Okay,
so you
and that's not profound. That's not profound whatsoever.
That's fine. The point is that if you are talking just like the guy that Jack was talking to in terms of logical possibility, then it's a good argument. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so then Jack's argument was forceful to that person he was talking to. So you agree with Jack that the argument was good, and you agree that the person he was talking to was a dumbass.
Yes, I agree. That is correct.
Good.
Yes.
That's all. That's the best that Jack Angstreich minions can give. Right? Okay. You assented to the argument. You assented to the fact that the person that Jack was talking to was a complete moron.
Yeah, I agree. I would never equate that. I would never equate that logical possibility is equivalent to metaphysical possibility, which is the modality relevant to God, because we are talking about a metaphysical entity.
I'm glad we all agree that the person that is dishonest moronic.
I haven't seen all of it, so I would not go as far as that. I just saw a little bit excerpt of Jack's part where he was like pissing himself about like his fucking voice, like his high pitched voice, and So I did see that part. Okay, fair enough. You defended his whole thing. Okay, so props to you. Okay, but I wasn't aware that this was concession was made on part of the interlocutor he was talking to. But anyway, yeah, I have to go to sleep, but I would love to talk to you guys again. Okay, fine. You guys definitely know your shit, but...
Hey, LaTeX, before you go, where the fuck do you get off? Where the fuck do you get off? Messaging me out of nowhere, calling me an idiot, you piece of shit.
Dude, you're gonna end up
Come back,
why are you
asshole.
posturing up? Relax, why are you posturing up?
Fuck off. I'm not posturing, I'm telling you to fuck off.
You are. Because you're an idiot. What you said in the other chat, you're an idiot for that.
Game over, lights out.
Yeah, that's fine.
You've just been completely obliterated publicly.
Shut up while I'm talking, right?
You've been folded like a chair caught with your pants down.
Will you fucking shut him up? I want to respond.